It may be the end of the season, but the garden's not over yet. Let's go take a look at some things that are going on over there.
Busy, busy around here. That corn is coming down. For a late fall garden, it's starting to look like a jungle out here. I had to do a ton of weeding the other day. It's gotten out of hand. All right, let's see what's in here. These are my green beans, and they ought to be done here any day. Another section of green beans. So we will be eating fresh green beans here through September by this really late planting that I did maybe a month or so ago, probably a month and a half. This is something new for me. I do grow garlic and some herbs like cilantro and basil from my own seed, but I don't get into saving seeds a lot. But this was my mustard that we grew that we really liked, and I let some of it go to seed, sort of unintentionally, just out of laziness, but I decided to just let it go. And of course it's making little seed pods, and I've already let some dry and harvested enough to make up for one of the packs of seeds. So I'm going to plant that next year and see if it is true to what it started out as, which is a heritage breed. So you guys who do this may know that it is. These are my pepper plants, and this may be a yearly occurrence for most of you, but I'll tell you, my pepper plants are amazing this year. Something about the weather, I don't know if it was hot and dry that ended up humid and really wet, but these guys look like trees. They're amazing this year. And normally my orange peppers do really well. I love that variety, so I plant them every year. They're one of my favorites. They usually do really well for me, but even then, never that tall and beautiful. But with that comes a ton of hot peppers. I've got jalapenos everywhere. So I've already dried some. I'll show you what those look like. Easy to do. I make a powder out of them. I also made 2 batches of hot sauce for Steve. He likes hot sauce. I tend to be more of a habanero person, so I have a ton of these guys down here. The problem is you only need like one, or at least I only need like one for the whole summer. But I do like to dry them and make a powder out of it that I use. Remember the asparagus I planted? Wow. Next year we'll be ready to harvest that. I need some help though. Any of you blackberry people? I've got my raspberries and they're on a trellis, and we sort of thought the same thing is true with these blackberries, but it's not. They don't trellis, they just spread out, and they're huge. So if anybody has a blackberry video they want to shoot in the comments for me, that would be great. Let's take a walk down Blueberry Lane here real fast. I planted 4 blueberry bushes. Well, I may have planted 5, but I have 4 left. And they're all doing pretty well. They've grown a little bit, but they've definitely survived, so I'm happy. This is Steve's wolfberry or goji berry bush. He's got big plans for that. I'm not sure what, but I've seen him out here eating the berries, which I don't really like. They kind of remind me of like a hot sweet pepper type thing. Not my favorite. Remember the strawberries that I planted in the tub and then I transplanted them? They need weeded, but they're doing really, really well. They have produced berries all summer that I keep picking off, but they're really small. So I'm hoping that's just not how that always goes. One thing I'll be doing today is cleaning out this raised bed. This is a very new raised bed and it just has crummy dirt in it. I'm going to add some better dirt on top and plant some fall greens. And with this, I'm going to put my little tunnel deal back up with the plastic and hopefully keep greens going a little later into the season this year. That's how most of my tomatoes went. But this really wet, warm weather we had brought some of them back. So I do have a few. There's one back there too that's really starting to fruit again. So that's great. Which reminds me, back over in the jungle, I bought the little plant maybe a month or 6 weeks ago. The late season tomato, and went ahead and planted it. I've got a few on there too. Hopefully they'll make it. All right, check this out. I did about 4 zucchinis, went ahead and just threw some seeds into the ground. And because I really get desperate for zucchini, and it all seems to dry up and die this time of year. So I try to plant it again and hope that it does okay. And this stuff's doing great so far. It's got zucchinis on it. I've been able to use a few. There's a nice one down there. Got a few in there somewhere. One of them looks to be rotting, but they still look good. And I also threw a butternut squash seed in the ground, which is taking over. Kind of ran over my flowers too, but that's okay. I've got 11 butternut squash almost ready in the back garden, and this thing is just loaded. They're everywhere. There's one down there. Last count I had like 20, and that was about a week ago, and there are just more everywhere. So really all I need are a few. I planted it late, so I don't know if they will be able to grow enough and ripen before we get a frost. It's really going to depend on the weather this year. These are my new cucumbers that I also planted where the old cucumbers dried up and died. I have since had some other cucumbers dry up and die too. So I have these that are looking good, starting to blossom, so hopefully I'll have some cucumbers. And I have a pot planted up in the front where it gets morning sun and afternoon shade. So I have high hopes for those too, to maybe get some later season cucumbers. Let's come out to the back garden. There is not much to see here. All of my zucchini and squash has basically been decimated by squash bugs. I always try to stay on top of it, and I do for a while, and then it all just kind of falls apart. My squash vines were pretty much done, and I got a ton of stuff off there, so I went ahead and weeded and got most of the dead vines out. So that's pretty much finished too. Sunflowers are all gone, dried up. Bird food now. But the one thing that remains are my sweet potatoes. I kind of cleaned up some of the weeds in there a little bit. They're still going strong. I see sweet potatoes in there. I also see some chew marks, which lets me know that the voles have been in there. So we still have at least a month to go on those. Right about first frost is when those will come out. Now that the corn is down, we're back to seeing as far as the eye can see back here. You may hear from my voice, we had the windows open because it really cooled down, and it's so nice to open the windows this time of year, but not really when you have allergies, and not really when they're harvesting corn all around you and the wind's kicking up all that dust. So the windows are closed again.